proactive, heavily human-centric project. We lay the moral foundation. We mix the mortar of our habits.
We step back and admire the walls of our virtues as they go up.
Yeah, exactly.
But imagine you are halfway through building this beautiful, virtuous house, and someone comes along and says, actually, the problem isn't the design of your house. The problem is that you are building a house at all.
Which is pretty jarring to hear.
Right. True perfection requires you to tear the entire thing down.
Mm.
And the text we are looking at today claims exactly that. It argues that everything we know about being a good person is essentially a waste of time.
Yeah, and we're going to look at exactly why. Today we're diving into this fascinating stack of translated excerpts from a spiritual diary.
From late 1929 and early 1930, right?
Yep.
It's known simply as Volume 27, and the entire text is this intricate, really highly detailed theological exploration of a concept it calls the divine will, or sometimes the divine fiat.
Okay, before we go any further into that, I want to clarify something for you listening. The term divine fiat is used interchangeably with divine will throughout these pages.
Yes, it is.
But for someone who, doesn't speak Latin or study theology, what does fiat actually mean in this context?
So fiat translates from Latin, basically, to let it be done. It's an authoritative decree.
Okay.
In this specific framework, it refers to the active, creative, spoken word of God, like the literal engine that spun galaxies into motion.
Wow.
So when the author talks about the divine fiat, they aren't just talking about obeying a set of rules. They are talking about entering into the primal force that powers the universe.
Which sets the stage perfectly for our mission with today's deep dive. We're going to explore the architecture of these ideas impartially.
Our goal isn't to endorse this theology or, take sides on any religious claims. We are simply unpacking how this text completely reimagines the relationship between the creator, the universe, and the human ego.
Because the concepts here are staggering.
They really are. I mean, it claims that true perfection requires this radical cosmic fusion where the human soul becomes the literal heartbeat of the divine.
Yeah, the author draws this very sharp, almost brutal distinction between merely doing the will of a creator and actually living in it.
Living in it, right.
Right. According to the diary, when a human soul truly possesses this divine fiat, they gain the capacity to enclose all of creation.
The imagery the author uses to describe this is just stunning. There is this recurring visual in the diary of a soul doing what is called a round in creation.
Oh, I love that part.
Yeah, the author describes this mystical state where the human soul symbolically sweeps through the cosmos. She gathers up the stars, the oceans, the sun, the wind.
Basically holding the entirety of the universe as though in the palm of her hand.
Exactly. And she hands it all back to the creator.
The text states that by doing this, human littleness can literally say, I give God to God.
I give God to God. That phrasing is so dense.
It really is.
But to make it relatable for you listening, think of a young child buying a birthday gift for their parent. The child obviously doesn't have a job or an income.
Right, they have no money of their own.
So they have to use the parent's own money to buy the gift. The parent isn't gaining any net worth in this economic transaction.
No, of course not.
They provided the $20 and they got a $20 mug in return.
But the value of that transaction has absolutely nothing to do with economics.
Exactly.
The value is the recursive loop of love. I mean, the parent provided the means, the child recognized the love, used those very means to purchase the gift, and gave it back.
And the text argues that this specific loop is what the entire universe was actually designed for.
Yep.
God pours out infinite love into the creation of the sun, the sea, and the earth. The human soul acts as the ultimate recipient, recognizes that love, gathers it up, and returns it.
The creator says in the text that seeing their works recognized and returned by the creature is the wonder of wonders.
Wow.
The human is described as so incredibly small, like a littleness or even a nothing.
And a nothing, yeah.
Yet through this divine will, that tiny human has the capacity to contain the all. The physical universe is vast, but the human soul, when aligned this way, is vast enough to enclose the entire cosmos.
Okay, but if this incredible feedback loop is the perfect state of the universe, we'll just look out the window.
Right.
The world is clearly not operating this way.
Right.
So if this was the original design, what broke?
So the text points directly to the fall of Adam to explain that cosmic rupture. But the way this diary frames the fall is entirely unique.
Yeah, it completely bypasses the traditional story of just eating an apple or, making a bad choice.
Exactly.
Right.
The author frames it not as a moral mistake, but as an ontological break.
And we really need to define that difference clearly for the listener.
Good idea.
A moral mistake is like driving your car off the road because you weren't paying attention. The car is still a car. You just drove it poorly.
Right.
An ontological break means the fundamental nature of the thing changed entirely. It's like the car suddenly turning into a pumpkin.
That's a great way to put it.
You didn't just break a rule, you altered your own operating system.
And by choosing to exercise his own isolated human will, Adam caused that system failure. He lost his place as an heir living in the house of God.
The distinction between an heir and a servant is everywhere in these pages.
It is. An heir lives in the house, shares the family table, and inherently owns the inheritance. But by rejecting the divine will, man became a servant who survives only on what the text calls a legal share of existence.
A legal share. It's like getting the bare minimum trust fund payout.
Yeah.
You get just enough money wired to your account every month to keep you fed and alive, but you were permanently exiled from the estate.
You have zero connection to the actual life of the family.
You exist, but you don't participate.
And the vivid language used to describe this exiled state is honestly chilling. The text says that operating from the human will forms a woodworm in the root of the tree of humanity.
A woodworm. Think about what a woodworm actually does. It hollows out the wood from the inside.
Right. The bark might look completely fine on the outside.
But the internal structure is rotting and compromised.
Exactly. And this creates what the author calls a literal night for the soul. Every time a person operates solely from their human will, even if they are doing something seemingly normal, they are forming darkness.
They're creating an environment where the sun of the divine will cannot shine.
Yes.
And this feels incredibly relevant to modern burnout. We are exhausting ourselves trying to be the source of our own light, hollowing ourselves out from the inside.
It's so true.
So if humanity is this diseased, hollowed out tree, how does this framework propose fixing the rot?
This is where the diary radically reframes the historical incarnation of Jesus. It doesn't describe it as a rescue mission or like a legal transaction to pay for sins.
Right.
It describes it as a botanical graft.
Like taking a healthy branch from a vibrant tree and physically binding it to a dying tree.
Exactly. The incarnation is the grafting of the divine will back onto the diseased human tree. But the critical detail the author points out is that when you graft a new branch onto an old tree, the tree doesn't instantly transform overnight.
Takes time.
A lot of time. The text argues that it has taken 2,000 years for humanity to slowly assimilate the new humors or the fresh divine sap of this graft down into the roots and out into the leaves.
There's a brilliant metaphor the text uses to describe the state of humanity prior to this graft. And it captures that feeling of existential exhaustion perfectly.
Oh, the sun and earth metaphor.
Yes. It says that before the graft, God and humanity were like the sun and the earth.
The sun warms the earth, it illuminates the dirt, it even causes plants to grow.
Yeah, but the earth never becomes the sun.
Right.
They remain entirely separate entities. You can feel the heat, but you are not the fire.
That is such a profound way to describe the human frustration of feeling disconnected from a higher purpose.
We can look up, we can feel the warmth of inspiration, but we inevitably feel stuck down here as dirt.
And the graft is meant to solve that separation. The goal isn't just for the earth to be warmed by the sun anymore. The goal is complete fusion.
The human will and the divine will becoming one operating force.
Yes.
But if humanity has been successfully grafted back onto this divine source, how does a person actually cultivate this connection?
Wow.
Because the answer in this text threw me completely, and I really struggle with it. It explicitly rejects our traditional ideas of what it means to be a good person.
We have to look closely at what is arguably the most counterintuitive argument in this entire source material.
Okay.
The author draws a stark contrast between sanctity founded in virtues and sanctity founded in the divine will.
And I just have to push back on this on behalf of the listener, because it sounds like a massive moral hazard.
How so?
Well, if trying really hard to be virtuous, like trying to be patient, charitable, or kind, is considered flawed, doesn't this philosophy just give people a free pass to do absolutely nothing?
Ah, I see what you mean.
Is it arguing for total passivity? Because telling people that good deeds are bad sounds like a great excuse to just be a terrible person.
It absolutely sounds that way on the surface. I totally get that. But the text is attacking the source code of the action, not the action itself.
Explain that.
The author uses a specific metaphor here. They compare traditional virtues, the good deeds you just mentioned, to a beautiful, flowery earth. The flowers are gorgeous, they smell wonderful, they are a sight to behold.
But flowers require human earth to grow. They need dirt.
Exactly. And in this mystical framework, that dirt represents human ego, self-esteem, vainglory, and self-satisfaction.
Right.
The text makes a piercing psychological observation here. Even our holiest, most selfless human works are almost always subtly tainted by the satisfaction of having done them.
Ouch. We do something kind for a neighbor, and then we sit back and wait for the thank you.
Yep,
That wait for the thank you, that little pat on the back we give ourselves in the mirror, is the dirt of the ego.
it really is.
It is devastatingly accurate, especially when you look at performative morality on social media today. We document our virtues specifically to build up the soil of our own self-esteem.
Spot on. And the text argues that as long as your virtues are rooted in that dirt, they are fragile, they are temporary, and ultimately they remain separate from the divine.
You are still just the earth being warmed by the sun.
Right. In contrast, the sanctity founded in the divine will is compared not to a flower, but to the sun itself.
Because the sun doesn't require any dirt to exist.
Exactly. The sun draws its nourishment directly from its source. When the divine will operates in a person, it completely eclipses the human will.
Wow.
It burns away the need for self-esteem or human satisfaction. The light is so incredibly bright, the human ego simply vanishes into it. You still help the neighbor, but you no longer keep the receipt.
So true perfection, according to this diary, doesn't come from the ego trying harder to be good. It comes from removing the ego entirely.
It demands total surrender.
The human will has to be quieted, put to sleep, completely eclipsed by the divine fiat.
Which brings up a massive paradox, right?
Yeah.
If the human ego and the human will must be completely eclipsed, what role does the human being even play? Do we just become passive robots?
Does the individual just disappear into the cosmos?
But the text argues the exact opposite. The individual doesn't disappear. The individual becomes vital, living infrastructure.
And the author uses this fascinating economic metaphor to explain this, calling the human soul a divine bank upon earth.
Yes. This resolves that paradox of human insignificance versus human necessity. The text states that every time the soul, operating completely within the divine will, says something as simple as, "I love you," God takes that tiny finite currency, invests it, multiplies it infinitely, and deposits it back into the soul's bank.
It is an economy of infinite compounding interest.
Basically, yeah.
The human provides the initial tiny action, like a single penny, and the divine turns it into billions, storing it right back in the human.
And this highlights why the human is so absolutely necessary. God needs a bank on earth to deposit these infinite riches into.
Right.
To explain this need, the text uses a really poignant historical framework. It describes Jesus as having endured 3 prisons.
The first prison was the womb, 9 months in the dark, restricted and confined.
The second prison was his physical humanity. 33 years confined to a human body, feeling the limitations, the gravity, and the pains of earthly existence.
And the third prison, according to the text, is the Eucharist.
Yes.
And to understand this third prison, we need to quickly look at the theology of the Eucharist for listeners who might not be familiar with this specific tradition.
Good point.
The Eucharist is a small wafer of bread that is believed to become the literal physical presence of God. It is kept locked in a small gold box called a tabernacle on church altars, waiting in total silence, often ignored for centuries.
And the author says that after enduring the womb, the physical life, and centuries in the silent prison of the Eucharist, the divine is actively looking for a second mama.
A second mama.
Yeah.
That's such a specific phrase.
It is. It wants the human soul to become a new prison, a new vessel, to mature this kingdom on earth.
Just as a mother was required to bring the physical incarnation into the world, human souls are required to bring this divine will out of the silent gold box and into the living world.
It is a profound symbiosis, and to ground this highly mystical idea, the author uses a striking anatomical analogy right near the end of the excerpts.
The heartbeat one.
Yes, it says that the divine will is the heartbeat, but the human soul is the heart. The will is the breath, but the human is the body.
That encapsulates this entire theology perfectly.
It really does.
Think about the biology of a heartbeat. You have the electrical node that fires the impulse. That electrical force is invisible and powerful.
Very powerful.
But without the physical muscle of the heart, the chambers, the valves, the human tissue, that electrical force has absolutely nowhere to go.
Right. It can't do anything.
It can't pump blood. It can't sustain life. The divine provides the invisible animating force, but it absolutely requires the physical, willing human muscle to exist and operate in the material world.
And that shatters the idea that the human is just a passive robot. Without the heart, the heartbeat is useless.
Exactly.
The text says that the divine will restricts itself to enclose itself in the creature. It makes use of the soul as if it were its own body, palpitating, breathing, speaking, and walking through the human.
Okay, let's take a step back and synthesize the journey this text has taken us on today.
Yeah.
We started at the absolute macro scale.
Right, the idea of a human soul enclosing the entire universe and giving God back to God in a perfect loop of love.
Then we examined how that loop was broken, the ontological tragedy of the human ego acting as a woodworm.
Rotting the tree of humanity from the inside out, reducing us from heirs to servants living on a legal share.
We explored the solution to that rot, the great botanical graft of the divine back into the human.
But that graft demands the total rejection of ego-driven virtues.
It asks us to abandon the human earth and the dirt of our own self-satisfaction so that we can be completely eclipsed by the sun of the divine fiat.
And finally, we arrived at the ultimate fusion, the human heart becoming the vessel for the divine heartbeat, the divine bank on earth compounding infinite love.
If we connect this back to your everyday experience, regardless of your personal theology or religious background, this text speaks to a deeply universal human feeling.
Doesn't it?
We are all thoroughly exhausted by the human earth.
It is exhausting to constantly manage our egos, chasing self-esteem, documenting our good deeds, trying to build that perfect house of virtues, while secretly hoping everyone notices how good we are.
It really is. The cycle of trying to control our moral standing is incredibly heavy.
It's the crushing weight of the human will. What this text explores in this incredibly vivid, mystical language is the profound relief of complete surrender.
The psychological relief of finally saying, I don't have to be the architect anymore. I can just be the house.
It offers a vision of life where you are no longer burdened by the dirt of your own efforts, but are instead swept up in a cosmic momentum that is infinitely larger than yourself.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder. There is a moment in the text where it claims that when the divine will truly reigns in a person, it simplifies them so much that pretense and lie no longer exist.
That's a beautiful concept.
Imagine for a moment what our society would look like if even a fraction of humanity stopped acting from their own ego-driven dirt. What if we stopped trying to build our own virtuous houses for everyone to admire, and instead operated purely as transparent lenses for a single unified will?
It raises an ultimate, really paradoxical question about the very nature of autonomy.
It does. Does true freedom actually lie in the complete surrender of our own will? If the house we have been building brick by brick is actually what's keeping us trapped, maybe tearing it down isn't a loss of self.
Maybe it's the only way to finally see the sun.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep questioning the architecture of your world, and we'll see you next time.